Oh yeah! Let me log in on this one.
Hey, welcome back to Snack Time. My name is Ben, and in today's video, we're going to be exploring Uptime Kuma. Uptime Kuma is an extremely valuable tool that can be used to monitor so much more than just the status of a website. It can also be used to monitor DNS changes, keyword changes, and the availability of TCP ports. But not only can it monitor, it can also notify you via Telegram, Discord, or over 90 different notification services. The first part of this video, we're going to dive into Uptime Kuma and see if it will suit your needs. The second half, we're going to be using Docker, Portainer, and Nginx Proxy Manager to configure our own Uptime Kuma server. I think Uptime Kuma is an extremely important addition to your IT stack, but I'll let you be the judge of that. Let's go ahead and explore Uptime Kuma. This is the main dashboard for Uptime Kuma. One of the first things you'll do when you're in here is to set up a new monitor. So let's set up a new monitor to monitor my website. I'm going to be looking for HTTP traffic here, and I'm going to monitor my Snack Time website. So I'm going to give it a friendly name, give it a URL. I can specify how often it will check to see if my website's up. And I can also specify how many times it can fail before a notification is sent. So if it's just a one-off thing, it won't always send at the very first time if you set this setting right here. So we're going to set this to 3, so it would have to fail 3 times within 180 seconds. If we scroll down, there's a whole bunch of other options that we can set here. We can add it to groups. We can change the status code. We can also do something really cool, which is called upside down mode, which means the monitor will alert you if the site is ever up instead of down. This is the most basic of monitors that will simply reach out every once in a while and check to see if a website's up. But Uptime Kuma has much more capabilities than that. Let me show you some of the other capabilities this software has. Let's go to New Monitor. And these are all the different things that it can check for as far as monitoring types. When I was at an MSP, I personally used this software to check if our clients' firewalls were still up and going. They used a specific port for that firewall's management. So just pinging the website wouldn't do me any good. I would give this monitor a name, XYZ Company, specify their external IP address, and then the port that I was monitoring. And while this will fail because nothing's running on port 8000, I could always tell if my client's firewalls were down, usually before they even knew it. Another really amazing part of Uptime Kuma is the ability to monitor for DNS changes. So we add a new monitor, we specify a DNS. So say we wanted to know if our MX record ever changed on a website that we were hosting. We give it a friendly name, give it a host name, and now we can specify the DNS server that we want to use. The default Cloudflare, we can leave that alone. And then you specify the DNS record type that we want to monitor. In our case, we want to monitor to see if our mail record ever changes. We click MX, we click Save, and we can see that it's already reached out and pulled our MX records. So if these were to change, we could get an alert. And while we're on the topic of alerts, let me show you its capability as far as notifications. You could set up notifications server-wide, but you can also set up notifications per different monitors. So if we go in here to our setup notifications, let's take a look at all the ones that it has here. And you can see there are a bunch of them. One of the more popular ones obviously would be like a webhook. We could have it send a message to Teams or any other server that supports webhooks. We also have the option for Discord, email, text messages, and push notifications. If you're setting this up internally, you can also monitor the status of Docker containers as well as different database servers. Lastly, we can create status pages which at a glance can show us the status of any of these monitors. Once we've created our status page, we simply need to add the monitors that we care about. And now anybody can navigate to this page and see the uptime status of these monitors, but without the details that you would see under the dashboard. I hope this helped you see the capabilities of Uptime Kuma. Keep in mind that this is just a small sampling of some of the things that it can do. It's a very customizable software. Next up, let me show you how we can set up our own server. Now that we've taken a look at Uptime Kuma and we've decided I do want to run this on my own server, let's start with the installation process. First thing we want to do is we want to find Uptime Kuma. It's very easy to find. Simply type in Uptime Kuma and GitHub. The very first thing here, made by Louis Lam. Hopefully I'm not messing that name up too bad. It's a very easy process to install. It's one line for Docker. We're going to be taking just a couple of pieces of information from this command line and setting it up with Portainer. Over to Portainer, let's first set up our volume. I'm going to add a volume. I'm going to call it Uptime Kuma. Like all of our other containers we've set up, I'm going to set up a separate network for Uptime Kuma so that it's separated from all of our other containers. I'm going to pick a subnet that hasn't been used yet, and it looks like 19 is available. I'm going to call this network Uptime Kuma. Paste this here, change this 5 to a 19. This is an extra step that you do not have to do if you do not want to. This is just me being a little extra paranoid when it comes to security. Now that we have our network set up, let's go back to containers and we'll add container. We'll go back to our GitHub and get some information from our command line here. First bit of information we're going to look at is restart always. We can set that with Portainer. Next up is our ports, 3001 to 3001. However, since we're going to be using Nginx Proxy Manager to filter all of our traffic, we don't need to configure that. We've already set up our volume. We just need to map it to /app/data. So let's select this, go back to Portainer, scroll down to where it says volumes, add an additional volume. We're going to paste in this path for our container, and we're going to select our volume Uptime Kuma. While we're down here, we might as well go ahead and join it to the proper network. We'll go to network and we'll select our Uptime Kuma. Scroll back up to the top and we'll go back to GitHub. Now it's telling us to specify our name. This can be anything we want it to be. We'll go to container, just type it Uptime Kuma. And now we need to specify the location of our image, which is this last little bit right here. We paste that under our image. This is basically saying this is the user under Docker Hub, and this is the project. I'm going to change this 1 to latest, which will tell our software to always pull the latest version. I think we're ready to go. Let's deploy. Our Uptime Kuma container has been created. Now let's set up a subdomain and configure Nginx Proxy Manager to point all the traffic to this new container. I'm going to go under Namecheap and specify a new A record. I'm going to click New Record, A record. I'm going to give it a subdomain of Uptime Kuma. I'm going to point it to the IP address of my server, which I already have here. I'm going to save these changes. Next, I'm going to go to Nginx Proxy Manager and set up my new proxy host. My domain that I set up was uptimekuma.senhow.com. Remember, that's the A record I just set up. Now it's asking me where I want to forward this traffic in Docker. If you've ever used Nginx Proxy Manager before, it's asking you where it wants to forward the traffic, either IP address or host name. I prefer host name because if the IP address ever changes, it's still going to forward the traffic properly. Let's go back to Portainer and get my host name. My host name is going to be this right here. It's going to be the name of my container. Remember that port that was in the GitHub? That 3001? That's the port we're going to be using to forward our traffic to. And I always click block common exploits as well as WebSocket support, and I'm going to save this. Now we've set this up, but the traffic's not encrypted yet. Let's set up our SSL. Very easy to do. We're going to click the little 3 periods, click edit, go to SSL, drop this down and request a new SSL cert. I'm going to force SSL traffic, and I'm going to agree to their terms of service, and we're going to save. Excellent, our website is all configured and set up. Let's check it out and see how well it's working. We click on Uptime Kuma. Oh, we're getting a bad gateway? That's weird. Well, we did miss one step. I'll show you that step, and the reason I left this in the video is because this is very common. This happens all the time, especially if you're working with different networks within Docker. I want to show you a very easy way to fix this. We go to Portainer. We click on our Nginx Proxy Manager container and scroll all the way to the bottom here. We'll see that it's not joined to the Uptime Kuma network. Therefore, when it tries to get to that host name, it gets a 502 bad gateway because it can't find it. Very easy fix. Drop that down and let's join that network. There we go. Now we're good to go. All right, it's asking us to establish a username and password. I'm going to use snack and I'm going to paste a very secure password. Now your Uptime Kuma is completely configured and ready for you to set up and start monitoring. Thank you for watching this video, and a special thank you to Louis Lamb, the author of Uptime Kuma. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, take care.